Hello everybody and welcome to another WEBfactory Smart Editor video tutorial. In this video we're gonna talk about working with state animations inside Smart Editor, and I'm gonna show you how to use the state animations on the WEBfactory ISA motor control, on the WEBfactory animated rectangle, and on a standard WEBfactory rectangle shape. So fire up your Smart Editor and let's build our new project. First, let's talk about ISA motor control, and you can find this control under the ISA symbols motors. We're gonna select it and drop it onto our page. Now, as you can see, our property inspector lists a lot of properties for our control, but we're interested in our states properties. So let's click the states button and bring up the edit items window. Now, this control allows us to configure several states for it. So we're gonna add state condition. Now, this state condition allows us to configure the state name, select a signal, compare the signal value to a constant value that we input right over here, and select the way it behaves when this condition is met. So let me give a simple example. I'm gonna name state 1 over here. Let's select a signal, and I'm gonna select the set.2 signal here. The comparison sign will be equal. Let's use it equal, but you can use any of these signs in this drop-down box, but to make it easier we'll use equal for this example, and we'll leave the signal value to 0. So what this condition states is that when the set.2 value equals 0, our control will be in state 1 and it will behave like this. The background is gonna be white, the foreground is gonna be black, it's gonna be visible, it's gonna be enabled, and is not gonna blink. So I'm gonna modify this a little bit. I'm gonna put it invisible, so I'm gonna check out the is visible checkbox, so nothing is there. Let's add another condition. Now, this is our state2 condition. We're gonna use the same signal, so I'm just gonna copy it from here to here. We're gonna use the same equal sign to compare our values, and this time I'm gonna make our value constant 1. Now, when this condition is met, I want my motor control to have the background yellow, for example. So the foreground is gonna be black, it is okay, it's gonna be visible, it's gonna be enabled. Perfect. So we're gonna add another condition and we're gonna name it state 3. We're gonna use the same set.2 signal and the value will be 2. Now, when this condition is met, I want my background to be red. We're gonna do it like a warning sign. The foreground should be white so we can see the text or the symbol pretty easy on the red background. And this time I want it to blink, so you can see how all this blinking mechanism works. So you enable is blinking, and here you have some blinking options. I want it to be medium blinking, so it doesn't blink very fast or very slow, just medium, regular. And the alternate background, which is the background that will be shown when the control is blinking, I wanted to make it a similar color to my red color, so I'm gonna do it with something orange, and the foreground is gonna stay white. So let's test this control with our setup, but first let's review our state conditions to make it clear. So we have 3 state conditions: state 1, state 2, and state 3. They all use the same signal set.2, and the values will be equal in each state to 0, 1, or 2 as value. Now, in our first state, our control will be invisible because let's just suppose we don't want to see our motor when the signal value is 0. Let's just suppose it doesn't work. In our second state, the signal value is 1 and we want to see our control with a yellow gold background, which says okay, it is running. And in our third state, when our signal value is gonna be 2, we want to see our control red with a red background and a white foreground and blinking, something like an error. Let's just imagine something caught on fire. So click OK and run to test our small control. Okay, now you can't see anything on the page. Well, this is because our signal value is 0, so our control, if you remember, is not visible. So we're gonna bring up the test center and we're gonna browse the server and select our signal and play with it. So our signal was set point 2, import it, close the window, and now the current value, as you can see, is 0 and our motor is not visible. So I'm gonna change this current value to 1 and let's see what happens. Well, as expected, our motor is yellow when the state 2 is enabled because the value is 1. And if we change our motor to the third state by assigning the value 2 to the setPoint2 signal, we're gonna see it blinking. So we have played with the ISA motor control and its states, but now let's see what happens when we mess with the states of an animated rectangle. So let's just drop an animated rectangle on the page, make it larger so we can see it, and let's see what its states option have for us. So let's go into the property inspector under the signal tab, and we have over here animated states button. So click on it and the same edit items window will pop up. So let's click add animated state condition and let's see what happens right over here. So I'm gonna make this window bigger so we can easier see. We have a state name, we have a signal name, a comparison sign just like we had in the ISA motor control. We have the signal value, the background, the foreground, the animated fill color, which is very useful in our case because we do have an animated fill besides the background and foreground. So let's start configuring again 3 states for this control so we can see how the states work. Let's select the signal. Let's leave the value to 0 and the comparison sign to equal. I want the background to be Alice blue this time and the foreground black. The animated fill should be red just so we can see it very easy. Now the second state. I'm going to use the same signal as in the first state and I'm going to put the value 50. So we have a bigger value here. Now the background, let's make it yellow and the foreground, let's leave it to black as it was. But we want our animated fill to be something different, something more close to, let's say, green this time. I know there are awful colors, but it's easy to see and we're gonna notice the difference right from the start. Okay, and we're gonna add another state, state 3, use the same setPoint2 signal, put the value to 99, and let's configure the background for this one, the foreground, and the animated fill, which I'm gonna make dark blue. So this third state, as the previous motor control, is gonna be blinking. So I want it to blink fast. I want the alternate background to be something very crazy like this blue. The animated fill should be pink and the alternate foreground should be aquamarine. Let's test our animated rectangle, but first we have set up the states. We still need to set up a signal for our fill because the fill is gonna represent the value of our signal. So we're gonna go under the signals in the property inspector and select a signal for us. We're gonna use setPoint1 for this one. Now that we have here setPoint1, we can run our project and see what happens. So I'm gonna get right back after the project is built. Okay, so we're back. Let's bring up our test center and see what we have here. Basically, our control is in the first state. like we describe it, it has this aquamarine background and our bluish foreground, and we can see no fill because our set.1 signal has probably the value 0. So I'm gonna load our signal in the test center, import, close the window, and adjust its value. So we can see if the value is 0, we have no fill inside our animated rectangle. But if we put here the value like 63 and press enter, we can see our rectangle filled up approximately 63% of its own surface. So basically this rectangle looks like a glass filled with some fluid, red fluid. So the set.1 signal controls our fill and the set.2 our state. So let's go into the second state and see what happens. So when we have the value of the set.2 signal as 1, our rectangle has basically no state defined for this and it will go back to default. But if we put here 50 like we defined for our second state, we can see every color has changed. Our fill is green and our background is yellow, and it's kind of awkward, but it's okay, it's just an example. So let's see what happens if we put 99 for our set.2 value. You can see our control starts blinking both the fill and the background, and we have incredible control over all these settings by using the state controls in Smart Editor. Okay, so we've seen the state animation working on the WEBfactory ISA motor and on the WEBfactory animated fill rectangle, but let's just see another quick example with a normal standard rectangle in our WEBfactory Smart Editor. So I've already configured the states for this rectangle, so it won't take us a lot of time, and we're just gonna go over it. So we have 3 states right over here, but this time the third state uses another signal. This is just to demonstrate that we could use multiple and different signals in our state conditions. So the first state has the background white and the foreground black, the second state has the background gray and the foreground white, and our third state, which is linked to our set.1 signal, has the background orange, the foreground white, and it has blink enabled with the alternate background red and alternate foreground yellow. So let's quickly test this one and see what happens. Okay, so our project is loaded now and we can see our rectangle being in the first state because it has the foreground white and the background black. So I'm gonna bring up the test center and start playing with the signals. So I'm gonna write the value 1 to get into the second state, and as planned the foreground is gray and the background is white. But we want to get in the third state, and for this we have to add our set.1 signal and assign the value of 50. But first we need to make sure that the second state is not active, because as we can hear we now have 2 different states active on our same control. We have the second state because our set.2 value is 1, and we have the third state active because our set.1 value is 15. So we have to get rid of the second state by putting the set.point value to something different that it is not specified in our states, like 3. And now we can see, because our set.1 value is 50, we have the third state active and our control is blinking. So this is all about state controls in Smart Editor. We're gonna meet next time when I'm gonna show you more cool stuff about WEBfactory Smart Editor.